accordingly. So kindly let's heed and occupy the front seats before we begin. Thank you very much. So in some few minutes, we'll be beginning with today's session. But before that, we'll take a wrap on what happened yesterday. Yesterday was the opening ceremony and also had a number of plenary sessions. And the sub-theme one for this conference was held yesterday on implementing the African Continental Free Trade Area, with sessions run by Dr. Francis Manjeni and Ms. Lindsay Heckley. We also went on to have some goodwill messages, a keynote address by His Excellency Abdurrahman Diallo from UNESCO. We also had poetry recital from Her Excellency Professor Abdullah Buzia. We had a welcome address from the Secretary General for the AAU, Professor Lushola Oyewole, and some other goodwill messages as well. We also had a special documentary that was displayed by Emerita Professor Sheila Walker. She was the producer of the documentary titled Familiar Faces, Unexpected Places, a Global African Diaspora. We went ahead to have our last plenary session. That was the fourth one, chaired by Dr. Moses Kumdazi on the topic, Consolidating the Diaspora Policy for Africa and the Caribbean. We had Ambassador Professor Joan Suma, Dr. Nozizwe Glenn Rose King, who spoke on connecting African peoples, infrastructures, and traffic policies. And finally was Dr. Uchenna Felicia Ugu, who discussed the topic, harnessing the regional and multilateral free trade agreement regime to advance domestic, educational capacity and innovation, advantages of the AFTA Private Sector Bill of Rights, and enabling the business environment in Africa. That's the rundown for what happened yesterday. And today, we look at the sub-theme 2, which is Rethinking Education Excellence in Africa. We'll have a number of, we'll have two plenary sessions that will break into parallel sessions, 5 of them. Then we'll return again for the final plenary that we can run out today. So a minute ago, let me just do the main introduction for today. So if you're joining virtually, you're welcome to day 2 of the World Conference on Education and Restitution here at the Association of African Universities, supported by Pan-African Heritage World Museum and UNESCO, bringing you this Diaspora Hybrid Conference. And today, with the opening plenary session on Rethinking Education Excellence in Africa, will be chaired by Professor Candace Maddox-Moore, who's an Associate Clinical Professor, Higher Education, Student Affairs, and International Education Policy Program, University of Maryland, College Park, USA. And the topic would be Rethinking Education Excellence in Africa, discussed by Professor Silas Lakwambaba, former Minister of Education, Rwanda, and Regional Managing Director, Coventry University, Africa Hub, Rwanda. And we'll have the various discussants, Dr. Enas Ahmed, lecturer, Matrug University and former member, UNESCO Global Geopath Council. We also have Dr. Vala Makuku. She is a quality assurance expert here at the Association of African Universities. We'll have Dr. Nozizwe Glenn Rose King, former head of policy for the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and rapported by Ms. Imbada Marie Giselle Amuji here at the AAU TV. Thank you. So quickly, let's move on without missing words to the chairperson for today's plenary, Rethinking Education Excellence in Africa, Professor Candace Maddox. Professor Candace Maddox-Moore. Prof, are you online?
Greetings. Can you hear me?
So I'll also invite onto the podium Professor Silas Lakambamba, who is a former Minister of Education, Rwanda, and Regional Managing Director, Coventry University Africa Hub. Put your hands together for him as he makes his way to sit here. So he's joined us here, and our discussants are also online. So Professor Candace Maddox Moore, right here in Ghana, we're ready and settled, listening to you. It's your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Greetings, colleagues, and welcome to day 2 of the Association of African Universities World Conference on Education and Restitution. As noted earlier, I am Professor Candace M. Moore, and I will serve as the chair for the session. Our plenary is titled Rethinking Education Excellence in Africa. It is positioned to give us an insightful and timely perspective on the topic. We thank our speaker, our discussants, and our rapport in advance for your meaningful contributions to this plenary session. This session allows us to problematize the term and associated measures of excellence in higher education. We will dispel the notions of previous proponents that traditionally position excellence in higher education using models that do not center African education and education systems. Our speaker will focus on the big question, which is, can the internationalization of higher education solve Africa's problems of access and quality and enable the placement of valid claims to education excellence? We will learn implications for practice and potential opportunities for future research from the case of Coventry University in Rwanda. Following his presentation, our invited discussants will spark our interest by using their own expertise in response to the main points offered by our speaker today. I will guide their discussion as the moderator. I will open the discussion with a broad question for our discussants. My opening question will be, from your area or discipline, please share the connections you're making between what our speaker has mentioned and your perspective on excellence in higher education. Again, from your area or discipline, please share with us the connections you're making between what our speaker has mentioned and your perspective on excellence in higher education. Once our speaker has completed his remarks, I will briefly introduce our discussants and open the discussion with the aforementioned broad question. Our speaker for today's plenary session is Professor Silas Lakambamba. His accomplishments and contributions to the field of higher education are many. However, I'd like to highlight his service in a variety of leadership roles in higher education, which has supported his strong understanding and the opportunities and challenges facing higher education. Most notably, he has served as the former Minister of Education in Rwanda. We thank him for his service. Currently, he is the Regional Managing Director of Coventry University Africa Hub in Rwanda. We are looking forward to learning from him today. Please, Prof, I now yield the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Dear Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, as I say, my name is Silas Lakambamba. I'm present the Regional Managing Director of the African Hub in Rwanda. First of all, let me thank the Association of African Universities and UNESCO for inviting me to speak on this topic, Rethinking of Education Excellence in Africa. The UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, recognize higher education as one of the integral components with particular emphasis on improved recognition and access to equitable and higher education. In order for higher education institutions to contribute substantially to positive social outcomes, they need to have the capacity to provide a high quality education that equips students with the skills necessary to thrive in the current economic and social circumstances and to adapt to future changes and innovation. To this end, the African Union has identified quality assurance as one of the key focus areas of higher education in its plan of action for the second decade of African education for Africa. The plan of action implements various initiatives to facilitate this process. Ladies and gentlemen, African higher education still faces numerous challenges attributed to access, quality, weak research base, funding, institutional capacities, and governance. These challenges have hampered institutional excellence aspirations and led to serious questions with regard to quality in learning, teaching, and research. Therefore, greater investment in education is particularly key in attaining the goals of inclusive quality education for all by 2030. COVID-19 disruptions have exposed serious weaknesses of African education system. The pandemic has revealed the need to invest more into technological infrastructure, especially to ensure the integration of ICT tools in teaching and learning. The crucial investment in education will bring results only if it's complemented by training of teachers in digital pedagogy. Ladies and gentlemen, quality and excellence are different and should not be treated as one and the same, but a dynamic duo that can catalyze an organization to quality consciousness. Whereas quality is driven from outside, fueled by the needs of customers and other stakeholders, excellence is holistic, pervasive, and emerges from within. Just a break. I don't know who is perfuming the area. I can smell a lot of perfume. I think somebody is spraying it or something, which unfortunately I might start coughing soon. Ladies and gentlemen, consequently, an organization that changes its strategy from a quality focus to an excellence focus must, as a result, have mastered the dynamics of being driven externally and recognize that additional process improvement requires turning inward. Quality education, therefore, is one that is pedagogically and environmentally sound and educates the students in becoming an active, productive member of the society. Whereas excellence has been traditionally linked to a distinction, a quality which is unusually good and surpasses ordinary and threshold standards. In higher education, the term excellence popularly appears in the mission statements of many higher education institutions. Universities usually claim in their strategic plans that they strive for excellence in research and teaching. In the context of academic quality and standards, excellence relates to the quality of teaching and learning and extent of resource provision for student achievement. This is manifested by student satisfaction and performance in assessment, as well as meeting labor market requirements. Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in other education systems where higher education institutions have significant research activities, different criteria are applied in determining the excellence. In the UK, for example, the concept of excellence in higher education places a lot of premium on the evaluation of quality and the value of research. The research excellence framework, for instance, has been developed to produce indicators for benchmarking the performance of UK higher education institutions against international standards. This benchmarking is used to assist in the allocation of research funding with a view to concentrating research activity in those institutions which are able to demonstrate world-class research performance. Madam Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, over the past decade, global universities have emerged as a significant factor in attracting internationally minded students. Internationalization in higher education is now entering a new phase, a shift from internationalization abroad with a strong focus on a small elite of mobile students, faculty, administrators, and programs towards internationalization at home for all members of academic community. The translation education, as it is commonly called, involves programs and providers moving across national borders to deliver higher education programs and credentials to students in their home or neighboring country, instead of students moving to the country of the foreign higher education institutions for their full academic program. Multiple case studies have revealed that universities today are using internationalization partnerships to enhance their tripartite mission, that is teaching, research, and community engagement. Furthermore, due to the presumably high standards and quality of most international programs, it is believed that internationalization will promote the quest for benchmarking, which will lead to making learning and teaching more relevant, enhance research and community engagement, educate for global citizenship and job market, and grow reputation and ranking of higher education institutions in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I want to invite us to reflect more closely on some of the following issues as we move towards rethinking education in excellence in Africa. 1, benchmarking. Studies have shown that benchmarking can improve academic excellence by means of comparison, assessment, and learning from each other. Mapping out best practices from within and outside Africa and adopting what has worked elsewhere could provide great insights for gaining additional knowledge on quality improvement that can lead to excellence. Regional and sub-regional organizations such as the Association of African Universities and the Inter-Invest Council for East Africa can take a lead in this one. Furthermore, success stories from universities operating at a global scale could be emulated by African institutions through mutually beneficial academic and research collaborations and partnerships within the framework of internationalization. 2, internationalization. The big question here would be, how can internationalization of higher education contribute to finding solutions to African problems of access and quality and lead to credible claims on education excellence? A good example of a global higher education provider that has achieved quality and excellence and which has contributed significantly in internationalization is my own institution, that is a Coventry University. The university has established 5 overseas hubs in Singapore for Asia, Belgium for Europe, Dubai for Middle East and North Africa, China for China, and Rwanda for Africa south of Sahara. Through its African hub in Kigali, the Coventry University Group is establishing strategic partnership with the organization in sub-Saharan Africa, enabling new relationships as well as strengthening established ones and promoting its research, academic partnerships, enterprise, and innovation work. Number 3, teacher training. A prerequisite for real teaching excellence at the individual level is a trained teaching professional. This is determined by factors such as inspirational nature of individual lecturers, the organization of presentations, the interaction with students as participants, and how well the information provided meets the learning objectives of the course. Quality education, therefore, is one that is pedagogically sound and educate students in becoming an active and productive member of the society. Since COVID-19 disruptions have exposed the weaknesses of African education systems, African governments should collaborate to build capacity for teachers for quality education delivery across the continent. Number 4 suggestion, technology. African governments should invest more into technological infrastructure and investment in teaching and learning technology to ensure integration of ICT tools in teaching and learning. This means adapting to the new normal of teaching and learning post-COVID-19 through blended learning methodologies. This also involves taking into account advances in digital communications, automation, and artificial intelligence, which are changing the way we live and the way we work, which are changing the way we live and the way we work, as well as the way we communicate, processes knowledge, and learn. Madam Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, in order to fully utilize the fruits of higher education endeavors, our fundamental concern should be to make sure that its quality and excellence are ensured, sustained, and upgraded at all levels, and appropriate policy measures are adopted to match local standards to international standards. Few examples I have highlighted above, the above various approaches which could be considered for recognition and promotion of excellence in higher education across Africa. Based on subsequent presentation discussions in the conference, other tools and ideas will be explored. I thank you all for listening and look forward to our fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof, for your remarks. I will now introduce our discussants for our plenary session. Following, I will open with a question for which they'll respond to, and then we'll move into the continual moderated session. Our first discussant is Dr. Anas Ahmad, serves as a lecturer in Egypt at Martroth University. Her expertise in Egypt and Africa with the main interests in vertebrate paleontology, sustainable development, EIA heritage, geopark, and geotourism. Her work promotes awareness in the intangible heritage and tangible heritage, geopark, geotourism, and sustainable development goals as a bottom-up approach through her face-to-face with local communities, guided tours, universities, and cultural centers, and online workshops with the Egyptian National Research Center to the Arabic speakers. Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed. Next, Dr. Violet Makuku holds a PhD in quality assurance from the University Education of the University of South Africa. She currently serves as the Higher Education Quality Specialist Diplomat, Project Officer, Workshop Coordinator, and Facilitator for the Association of African Universities in Accra, Ghana. She has been engaged as a special guest speaker, panelist discussion chairperson in many international higher education events, and brings to us her expertise in quality assurance. And finally, Dr. Ngozwe is the founder and director of Mind to Body the Nations, a multilateral organization that mainstreams economic development through policy reforms that facilitates the integration of the continent. Ms. King is inspired by developing and empowering others through systemizing, solving problems, and writing reforms that impact human development. We are pleased to have such a variety of knowledgeable and individuals who are contributing to the advancement of higher education broadly and on the continent. I would like to learn from our panelists this particular question. From your area or discipline, please share with us the connections you're making between what Prof has shared with us this afternoon and your perspective on the excellence in higher education. I'll invite Dr. Ahmed to open. Dr. Ahmed, are you there? Okay, while we await Dr. Ahmed's contributions, I'll ask if Dr. Makuku, if you would open with a response to the question, and again, I'll mention it. What connections are you making from your particular area or discipline to the comments made on excellence in higher education?
Thank you very much. All protocols observed. Thank you very much for this opportunity. For me, I'm a quality assurance specialist. I'm also into education in general. And I think the key points that were highlighted by the keynote speaker have to do with the quality of education, governance, maybe issues of equity, but issues of funding. For me today, my focus will be on funding to begin with. Ladies and gentlemen, even in yesterday's sessions, you heard everybody saying, but because of funding, we can't do this. Because of funding, we can't do that. Ladies and gentlemen, it's high time we think on our own ways of funding ourselves. If I can say today, many governments, because maybe the public institutions are becoming more and more, and maybe because of economic challenges and other reasons, the cake continues to shrink. The piece of cake that is being given to institutions continues to be smaller and smaller. It is against that background that I'm saying to us, let's think of third stream income. I talk of entrepreneurship. In its broader sense, I talk of research, but it is only when we complete the research process that we can realize funding opportunities, either from funding organizations or from the sale of our intellectual property, patents as intangible products, and copyrights as in maybe writings and software in ICT and so on. So third stream income is what we need to think about. Things do not do themselves. We need to do them. And so you find that everybody everywhere in Africa is giving the excuse of lack of funding as one of the key things that stops them from offering quality education, from progressing from this and that. And my message today for African higher and tertiary education is that we have nothing, but we have everything. Again, in terms of funding, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have a lot of grants out there. And so with those grants, do you know about their existence? How do you get to access them? Even if you access them, do you have the knowledge and skills on how to apply winning grants, to write winning grants? These are the issues. These are the key questions for African higher and tertiary education, because it's real. The money is there. The support for especially ICT in infrastructure and internet services after COVID-19, a lot of funding is in existence. I just want to say the Association of African Universities offers a lot of capacity building workshops and other events to enable you to get the knowledge and skills on how best to go on your path for effective entrepreneurial programs, for you to write successful grants, because if you continue to write and you don't get anything, you get frustrated. Let me quickly move on to the other one. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why we are having the diaspora and the African-based community is to tell us that we are one family. Only that our colleagues are scattered all over the world, but that they are there, it doesn't stop them from being Africans. But now it pronounces the fact that we are one family. And so if we are family, what can we do? What kind of collaborations can we forge ahead so that if we have our diaspora in Australia, in the US, in Europe, we can have knowledge and skills transfer from each other. They need African history desperately to understand their roots, and we are there to pass that to them. We also need the current technologies, how things are happening there in the developed world, and they can also come and assist us. But I have one appeal, one gentle appeal to our diaspora. Ladies and gentlemen, I can name a number of organizations, non-governmental organizations that are based in Africa, that are helping our people, be it water provision, education provision, and these other things, maybe donating books and so on. But when it comes to our own diaspora, do we ever think of maybe coming together in Europe, in Australia, in the US, build a community of mobilizing resources that you can push back home? Let me take a quick example of medicine. Maybe there are new pieces of equipment. What does it take our brothers and sisters in the diaspora to put together money or in kind or cash to buy us some of these pieces of equipment, make them central in some university for accessibility by many in the medical schools? In agriculture, we can do the same. So this is my appeal. Because sometimes when the diaspora get time, they come to Africa, to our fellow institutions, but they do not want to offer any services for free. They start charging also these brother universities. Please, if you want me to come and do you some research or to lead your students as a guest lecturer, you are going to fly me, you are going to pay me, you are going to feed me. That's my appeal, ladies and gentlemen, in the diaspora. If possible, let's also mobilize resources from those foundations whom you know are in the habit of giving maybe pieces of equipment. To them, they are obsolete. But you find that in Africa, we may consider them as something, a point to start from, as we also try to get the latest versions. So I can go on and on, but in the interest of time and to give others the opportunity, let me stop here and others can also make inputs. I thank you.
Thank you for your contributions. I would like to invite Dr. Ahmed, if she is available, to share her response and the connections that she's seeing between her specific area and the comments made with regard to excellence in higher education by Prof. Dr. Ahmed, can you hear us?
Yes, I am with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Can you repeat the question again because of the internet?
Sure. The question is, please share the connections you're making between what our speaker has shared today and your perspective on excellence in higher education.
Okay, thank you. Actually, for the higher education, I am thinking of it as the roadmap for Africa and for the African leadership. I always thinking that if you make a woman learn, you are going to learn a whole family, a whole community. And when you help a man to learn, so you are supporting one individual. So in the end, I'm thinking of higher education that it's the ability to listen and to work and to give the opportunity for the next generation, especially for our Africa. Because in Africa, we have a lot of resources and we have a lot of abilities, potentials, but it's not being used very well because of the lack of the good education and the ability to use it in the right way to get the results according to the SDGs. Also, I'm thinking that what I am applying in my institution here, that I'm pushing my students to learn not only the subject that they are using for the graduations, but also for their work and for their supporting them in their community, to be aware, to learn a lot of things, not just for the learning for graduation. And this is will help us to grow up and to support our African community and economics. And from that, education and learning is one coin showing us how we are strong and how far we can go. This is I don't want to take much time from you, but this is what I want to summarize in a short one sentence. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. I'd love to hear from Dr. Noziwe King. Is she on today? Dr. King, are you present? Dr. Noziwe King, are you there? Okay, we hope to hear from her soon. I appreciate the comments that were shared, and I am curious to hear from, inclusive of our speaker, any comments that people would have that allow for us to make some distinctions between learning versus education. Is there a difference? And if so, what might be some of your perspectives on that? What learning versus education? What are some of your perspectives on that? I will open with Dr. Ahmed first.
Thank you, Professor. I think education is about the subject that the students need to be graduated and to be specialized in one area to be promoted in it through his career. But learning is about the moment that the person being born, and at the same time he began to learn in this moment. He began to smell the air of the earth until the last second of his life in the earth. This is about the learning. You are a continuous learner, human being. But for education, you are just use what you need and educated with what you need to go on in your career. This is but for here, this is what we are working on it, to push the students and to give them the opportunity to be more open mind and to learn more about everything. And at the same time, they work very hard for their education and promotion in their nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Professor Lakawamba, what are your thoughts regarding learning versus education? Or do you not see them as different?
Thank you. First of all, I just want to comment on what my colleague here said, and then I come to that. Dr. Violet Makuku, on the issue of funding and the issue of how do you manage to, when you don't have so much funding, how can you do it better? Funding, I think the problem which we face is that our institutions, there are so many opportunities outside, but we don't know them. Most of the time, we don't know them. And if one could search, or with the help, like my colleague said, with the help of the diaspora, to really inform us what is available and what is not available, it could help. I remember an example of some entrepreneurs from the US approached me when I was a vice chancellor of the National University of Rwanda. They came with a model whereby they could build what we call the BOT, build, operate, and transfer. They build either laboratory or hostels or whatever you want, and then they operate it for a number of years, let's say up to 20 years. Meanwhile, you pay slowly to the entrepreneurs, but it has to be guaranteed. Obviously, it has to be guaranteed. If an institution of, let's say, government, it has to be guaranteed by your government. If it's a private institution, you have to be guaranteed by some banking institution. That way, you pay slowly from the fees of students or from whatever other resources you get. And after you have finished the payment over a 20-year period, let's say, you get your infrastructure, your building and equipment, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, we don't tend to use it that much in Africa. So I think this is one model which I think people could look at. Number two suggestion is that if you look at institutions of higher learning, because they want to attract as many students as they want, they become general institutions. They try to teach everything. They try to cover everything. That way, you spread your resources somehow to different, type of training activities. So I think if we can agree later on, maybe through the higher education councils in different countries, to specialize in certain areas. That way, if it's agreed, you can attract students in that area, you do research in that area, and I think you can attract more resources than what we do trying to specialize in everything. We really need to think about this, literally. What about training and learning? Training is when, to me, training is when somebody comes and teaches you something new in the class or even in life, but mostly in the class. But learning, you can learn by observing what is happening from experiences, from other things. And to me, that is how I distinguish it. You can learn, like they say, lifelong learning. You don't be to attend classes all the time in your life, but you can learn a lot throughout your life. Even up to now, I still learn from my own kids who they get information from other people, from other institutions, from other experiences, and they teach me something new. Always I'm learning something new. But training, obviously, is something, puts you in a class, try to give you a curriculum or something else, and teaches you what has to be implemented or to be done. That's how I distinguish it between myself. Thank you.
Thank you. I would love to hear from Dr. Violet Makoku. Are we really talking about reforming education, or are we talking about reforming learning when we focus in on African higher education, particularly from a quality assurance position? Is it that we are focusing on reforming education, or are we talking about reforming learning, or quite possibly both? For just a moment, we're unable to hear you. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
Thank you so much. So what I'm saying is that if we are focusing on one of them, then we need to change the approach and focus on both, because we need both. We need curricular reforms. I'm a quality assurance specialist and also a curriculum specialist and educationist. When we change the curricula, there are two things. We need to do curricular reforms. And when we do curricular reforms, we are looking at obsolete things which are in our syllabi, which are in our course of studies, and throw them away completely. And then we are looking at the new and trending things that are necessary, particularly for the new workplace. I want to say that after COVID-19 and with the coming of the fourth industrial revolution, which we started seeing prominently in 2016, but had started much earlier, one of the key issues which we need to address is every course, every degree program should have an ICT component in it, curricular reform. Because these courses earlier on, they came as music, they came as art, they came as agriculture, they came as economics, they came as accounting. But today, the accountants need some software to use. The agriculturalists need some digitalized equipment to monitor moisture. The medical personnel. So every degree program, that's a major reform in curricula. We also need new programs, because with digitalization, every time you hear your bank says, please bear with us, we are upgrading the system. It's not only banks, companies are doing the same. And so what I want to immediately say is that, I heard some students in some universities during some communication saying that we are so sad that our institutions want us to go back to face-to-face teaching and learning. Why? If anything, it should be blended learning. Do you agree with me, ladies and gentlemen? Why? Because if we go back to face-to-face, they lose that opportunity to learn more about ICT skills and internet services, which is the current and contemporary things in our industry and in most of the upcoming new jobs. So as we teach them using the digital pieces of equipment, using the ICT services, as much as we are teaching them, we are using those to relay knowledge and skills. They are also actually learning those skills for the industry. If you see that, I know South Africa for real. I'm not sure of other countries. Kenya started it also. I don't know how long I was involved in one of the activities. The skills gap analysis. We need to check. There are many new jobs. But now, if your institution is not guided by what industry now requires, your graduates will roam the streets jobless. But there are many jobs out there which require them. So we need to check on that. And then when we look at two words which I'm moving with today, it's relevance and transformation. So when you look at relevance, we are saying that when you remain where you are, you become irrelevant. As an institution, when you become irrelevant, you become obsolete, which means your institution will eventually close because the students are speaking to each other and telling each other, oh, this institution, we pay a lot, but we are learning very little. That institution is, so they are all rushing to those transformative institutions. But what are transformative institutions? They are highly responsive. They are agile. They just go and ride onto the wave that is there. And as a result, they always remain relevant. So what kind of an institution are we? Very important. But I want to add on very quickly that sometimes we undermine the power of culture. We undermine the power of a people. But let me say, linking with the question that I've just been asked, the personal culture, individual culture affects a whole family. It affects a whole class of learners. It affects a whole institution. And at the end of the day, it affects the whole nation. I remember in Ghana when President Dodangwa came on board, he says we can't do business as usual with lots of adverts, with everyday talk, because he was saying, Ghanaians, I know you, for events, you can never be on time. The whole president. But Ghanaians, have we changed regarding that culture? But do you know time is money? So we need to change and transform for the better. So we need both in terms of now changing the teaching and learning and changing the education system. Yes, we also need to do that because that's where we are looking at which approaches are most effective in bringing the kind of learner that we want. They say the old teaching methods were about the lecturing, the storytelling, more of storytelling without asking questions or something like that, where we find the teacher or the lecturer is labeled as the fountain of knowledge. And then the students are called tabula rasa, which means they have nothing in their brains. But when we look at the whole scenario, is it true? Even when they go for kindergarten, are they having no experiences to share as they are being taught? So we come to the modern teaching methods, which are the learner-centered approaches, where we are saying lecturers and teachers should just be facilitators, whilst they guide the students so that students have the experience of creating knowledge and skills, of just doing a project, of problem solving, of many other things which they can do on their own, because it enables the skills transfer now to have them as they are doing tasks, they get skills. And the lecturer or a teacher is there to correct them. But if you are doing everything for them, at what point are they going to do and learn things? You are the one who does the demonstration. It's not followed by students' demonstrations. You do the experiment. You are not allowing them also to follow with an experiment. So it's still available in some institutions. But as the AAU, once again, we find that online teaching and learning is one of those modes which really creates time for the teacher or a lecturer to do more, whilst giving autonomy to students to work on tasks, but the tasks are on a higher order level. Ladies and gentlemen, we say remembering, comprehension, no. Analytical skills, examination skills, design skills, evaluative skills, those are the things that can be done by students if they are empowered to do things. Let me stop here in the interest of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To your point, in the interest of time, I do want to give our reporter an opportunity to provide us with some closing remarks. But before we move into that, I would like to thank genuinely the comments and directions offered by our speaker, particularly the implications for practice. And having heard from our panelists regarding the many directions that we can look at the future of reforming education and thinking about it through a variety of cultural lenses, as well as a more directive focus on the learner, we have an opportunity to set the measurement and also idealize what excellence really looks like in African education. Thank you again for your time, and certainly to the members of the AAU and the coordinating team for bringing together this plenary session. We look forward to engaging with you throughout the conference. I yield the floor.
Hello, Prof. Candace.
Hello.
Okay, so we have some invited guests in here who would also want to pass some comments. So if kindly I could just have a few say some words about what has been done this morning.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Abd Salam from Ethiopia, Kabri Dahar University. I would like to appreciate the presentation given for us from Professor Silas, and also I also appreciate Dr. Violet, the points that have been raised. Professor, I have one question. Just, I agree with you, the point that you have presented in the excellence in African education. But when we see our institutions, the African universities are facing so many problems, so many challenges regarding the differentiation, institutional autonomy, curricula, and structure and administrative issues, so many challenges there. And also in our country, the Ministry of Education currently working on the differentiating of the university, because if the institution is not differentiated in the country, not specialized in a specialized area, we may face so many problems, overlap, and also so many education programs may be there. So how you see the autonomy of the institution, and also the differentiation of the university in each country and also in Africa?
I hope that the questions and comments will be put down as we gather them all.
Thank you very much, Prof. Mine is not a question. Pastor Dr. Anthony Nyamsempoku from Ministry of Education, Ghana Education Service. I think the question, if I got it well, is about achieving organizational or institutional excellence. And I think one of the key things to consider is having quality or strategic thinking, that whoever is part of the system should be considering how to ensure quality in the very institution or wherever we are serving. The next thing to consider is about strategic direction, where we'll be heading toward a given milestone. From this also, we can consider having applied kind of metrics using, for example, net promoter score, and 2, customer satisfaction, whereby we go back assessing what we give to our clients is really what they need. Then I also think about having strategic communication, expressing ourselves well so that our significant stakeholders get what we want to achieve, and then to also be ready and prepared to follow the management or whoever is in charge. Then again, there must be purposeful hiring. Here, what I mean is that those we are recruiting are those who fit for the purpose, not because we need people to work, and therefore anybody at all who comes to the must be ignored. Even once we have these people, there must be appropriate orientation coupled with providing those personnel with the requisite tools to work with. Again, once we have these things done, there must be some kind of culture purposefully designed to achieve the goals and objectives of the institution. And once we have established that, there must be some kind of relational trust. This will be ensured by effective total quality management systems, which will provide that kind of empowerment, because once everybody is involved, then subordinates trusting the top management trusting the subordinates will be assured. Then again, there must be some optimization of work environment. Once the systems are well working, then there will be some environment-friendly kind of system whereby fear, intimidation, all those things will be done away with. Again, as already mentioned, funding is critical. So there must be required budgets through resource mobilization and management to empower whatever we want to do. And with respect to education, then I think there must be some objective-based kind of education or the curriculum. And then the brother or the sister, competency-based education. Once we are able to, in addition to what we have already said or is discussed, once we are able to put these things in place, then the quality, the excellence, whatever, we can work towards there, and thereby making the system improved for the well-being of society. Thank you very much.
We have also one hand up. There you go, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Professor. Thank you for your presentation. My name is Atse Kambu Martial. I'm from Côte d'Ivoire. I'm a general coordinator of Africa Network of Young Researchers. Two questions. My first question is, how can you rethink our education when you don't know our story too well? Most of our story that we teach to people, students, as written by the colonizers or the Africans. This is my first question. My second question is, in your opinion, Professor, what language, what African language should be taught in Africa, since we want to reframe education in Africa. Thank you very much.
Okay, Professor Candace, there you have it.
I believe we have one individual who has a question online.
Okay. So George Joel Omara, you can unmute yourself and then let's hear from you, George. Hello, George. Okay, we see a hand also, Janine. Dr. Nicole, let's hear from you, please. So there are two hands online from George Joel Omara and Janine Uemana Nicole. We're ready. We want to hear from you. Your concerns, questions, comment, please.
They've requested to be unmuted.
Yes. Hello,
everyone.
Hello,
Hello.
George. Okay, so George first. No.
Okay, thank you very much. This is afternoon in Uganda. And I know we are different time zones, so I am grateful to be in this forum today. I am happy to have listened to one of the most important themes that we are discussing today, rethinking education excellence in Africa. Now, there has been two ideas that came, the internationalization and also the indigenization of the education in Africa. In my opinion, if these factors are put into a continuum, one on the other extreme, then we are not going to achieve much. I do agree with Professor who talked about transformative education. In this sense, making education that which works for us. Therefore, my question comes, how can we then make our education in Africa transformative, looking at the fact that much of our curriculum is actually westernized. It is influenced by the ideas that today we think they are not really very relevant. And then also looking at the fact that Africa is still unprivileged when it comes to certain factors like funding, like we've been talking about. So what would be the best way of coming up with a good transformative education? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
We'll now
George.
hear from Janine.
All right.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Candice and Prof, sorry, and to Professor Silas Rakabamba and Dr. Violet for all the contribution and others. My question actually is a follow-up to the previous speaker, which I had, I'm glad that he asked the question, but the follow-up question is about finding the nexus between the internationalization and the indigenous knowledge or education or form of learning. How do we get that nexus? Because I think one does not exclude the other, although we know that our current, the current content, majority of it, it's influenced by the Western. So, but how do we get the nexus in a very more balanced way to make sure that our indigenous knowledge reflects, but at the same time, kind of keep along with where the world is evolving, right? That's number one. The second one, I think Professor Lokabamba spoke about, the availability of funding, and I believe in it as part of an African diaspora. There is a lot of funding hanging around. There is an issue of the whole private, the education sector itself, to be able to be proactive and having as well conducive environment from either the Ministry of Education to be able to tap into the diaspora. As far as the skill transfer is concerned, it's not only the diaspora coming to provide, I believe, not only coming to transfer the skills, but we still, as African as well on the African continent, there are skills like such as indigenous knowledge that will profit as well the diaspora, particularly in the North, where we'll be able to maintain the narrative about African people and African descent. So it's a two-way kind of thing, but probably will be more, what is the appropriate model or effective approach to tap into the diaspora, by making as well, maintaining the equilibrium so that the diaspora as well does not think they're superior than those who are on the continent. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. We are managing time and want to be respectful of both the conference planning and those who are on the dais. To assure that we are able to address as much as possible, I'd like for each speaker to take about 1 minute to address any of the comments and or questions that were mentioned here today. I'll first start with Dr. Ahmed. Please provide us with your closing remarks and or response to any of the questions that you have heard. We'll then follow with Dr. Makaku and then end with Prof. Lakwanda before we leave for today. Dr. Ahmed.
Hello, Prof. Prof. Candice.
Yes.
So sorry, there's one last hand up here at the conference room, if we can pick. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me the chance, and I'd like to thank the speaker and the discussant. I want to comment on the last question by the last question about the nexus between internationalization and indigenization. For me, that shouldn't be an issue, because that question presupposes that the indigenization is inferior to internationalization. The question is the colonization of our minds. There's a lot of knowledge that we call indigenous, which has been demonstrated, for example, how we dealt with the pandemic on the African continent, that can be considered to be international. So it's a question of us who have the indigenous knowledge, believing in ourselves that the indigenous knowledge can be applied in its own right, and it's not necessarily in competition or inferior to what we call internationalization, which presupposes that internationalization means what comes in from the West. I think it's upon us to take the plunge, decolonize our minds that we have a lot in indigenous knowledge, whether in governance, agriculture, health, education, justice system, that we can contribute, that can inform curricula internationally. So it's actually fits into the theme of this conference about how we can reaffirm the rights and the recognition, even by AU Agenda 2063, that indigenous knowledge on the African continent needs to be brought to the fore and given its rightful place so that it is seen as together with other knowledge systems. Thank you very much.
Thank you kindly. I appreciate that. We'll now hear from Dr. Ahmed. Your final comments, if there are any responses that you would have, we'll literally ask that each person take 1 minute so that we can close appropriately. You may need to unmute Dr. Ahmed. Have we unmuted Dr. Ahmed so that we can hear her final comments? Okay. Dr. Ame, you should be able to unmute yourself so that we're able to hear from you. Okay. While we are waiting to gain access to her comments, I'll move to Dr. Makafu. If you wouldn't mind sharing your final comments, please, for just one moment.
Thank you once again for the grant opportunity. So, yes. So for me, in terms of an effective model of the two-way approach where we make sure that indigenous knowledge systems are not felt as inferior to the developed world is to have joint programs. The joint programs where even the input, if we are saying, for example, we get a snake venom treatment, we know it in our indigenous context, but we now want to say, let Western knowledge and pieces of equipment come in to do research together to say what are the appropriate doses. I'm just giving a quick example, which is very simple to understand. We can also have joint degrees and many other joint activities which show a 50-50 or a win-win situation. And then I want to quickly say, in terms of finding the nexus of internationalization and indigenous knowledge systems, I've already explained one. But what I want to say is our challenge is that the definition of internationalization may not be one, but whichever definition, what I've seen as the challenge is on implementation. Taking, for example, many students, when internationalization is being talked about in some other quarters, you find that the content and information is about students moving from Africa to the Western world. And then we don't have people coming from the West to Africa. The programs could be offered in Africa, but when the certificate is obtained, it's one which carries a name and everything about somewhere in Europe. Indigenous knowledge systems exist in all the areas, mining, agriculture, what have you, medicine. So how can we have a curricula? We need to come together, design curricula that make sure that IKS is brought together with Western science and Western knowledge, and then we can move on. I'm almost done, please bear with me. And then we want to talk about think globally, act locally. I think you have heard about that statement a lot of times. How can we make education transformative? So in this day and age, we need to make sure that we identify the local needs in our communities. For example, Ghana, Nigeria, they are in the coastal areas. And so we need programs to do with marine biology and everything like that, fisheries and so on. You become relevant because that prevails in that context. Where we have arid and semi-arid places, we also need to find how best we can make sure people can get a livelihood there. And then we look at other areas. There are so many examples, but in the interest of time, I will just say these are a few examples of how institutions should look at local needs surrounding them and then push them into the curricula. It's already more than 1 minute. One, there's what we call the continental education strategy for Africa. Do we know it? If we don't know about its existence and we have never looked at it, how then can we bring about that education which is relevant for the continent? Let's look for that document, Continental Education Strategy for Africa. I can share. So let me hand over to Prof. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, thank you.
Prof, I just wanted to check in quickly. I would like to give you the final word just to see if Dr. Ahmed has been able to gain her microphone. Dr. Ahmed, are you there?
I'm here with you. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Actually, I'm supporting this speech about Delta, and I'm sure that we, through working the institution and learning, are going to improve the results of the implementation of our community. So,
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. We appreciate your contributions today. We'll end with comments from Professor Lakwanda, who would love to hear your thoughts regarding the discussion.
Thank you, Chairperson. There was a number of issues raised by a number of people. If my brother from Ethiopia talk about autonomy and the problems faced by the institutions on autonomy, one day I was pushing it in cabinet to give it autonomy to our universities. And then I was asked a question: how do you expect full autonomy when you are depending full funding from the government? That is a problem. So unless you can provide your own funding, then I don't know how you expect full autonomy. On the issues or problems of universities, I think this one is really it's an issue of leadership. Most of our leaders in institutions are not trained how to lead. And we need these people to be trained, and they can learn quite a lot how to manage the institutions. So they come in because he's a professor of biology or professor of physics, he becomes a vice chancellor without so much training. It is a problem. Secondly, our teachers are not trained how to teach and to teach in the modern world something. So I think we really need to change this type of things. Thirdly, a lot of our institutions are, because professors are trained to have PhDs and all these things, they're specialists in their own area, they don't even bring, the industries into the institutions. You are training for industries and you don't want to deal with them. What will happen? You see, this is something which I think we need to change. So we need to transform our institutions and bring the industries into this. Cote d'Ivoire, a colleague from Cote d'Ivoire is here. He asked what language should we teach in? Definitely. What other language? Chinese. Which language do they use? Chinese. Go to India. What language do they use? Go to anywhere else, even in European countries. They use their own languages. So I think if we manage it, we should also be able to teach in our languages if we make it possible. Uganda, they talk about transformative education in Africa. I had to repeat the issue of bringing industries into the institutions. The other day, I was talking to the Minister of Education of Ghana. We visited the minister's office. Because if you look at China, they train massively IT students. They train massively, they graduate massively in engineering. So it came up with some idea which is really transformative. In order to get a lot of engineers, he does not depend on graduates from secondary schools who are in PCM, physics, maths, and chemistry. He wants even to take people in arts and convert them to do engineering. And he's doing it. And it's going to work for him. And I think this is something which is very new. We should be able to try it. There are ways of doing it. Conversion courses. They first of all give them foundation courses, and then they give them conversion courses to be able to study engineering, and they confirm engineering. So I think this is something which we should look at. I believe Ghana is going to succeed this way because the minister is very serious and is setting up quite a number of technological institutions. I think he's building 5 of them soon. So we have to look at these innovative ways of trying to transform our education system. Thank you so much.
Thank you kindly. We will now have our closing remarks from Ms. Ambuwanji.
Hello, Prof. Who is giving the remarks again?
I believe the report is
The rapporteur. Okay.
Ms.
So,
is she
Miss
there?
Imelda.
Is
Miss
she there?
Imelda Marie Giselle Amuji. Can you kindly give us just a brief summary of the session as requested by the chair? Okay, Prof. So according to my time, we have 3 minutes to transition to the next session, and I think Miss Imelda is not responding. So I will kindly ask if you could help us with a brief closing words so we can move to the next session. Prof. Candice.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Today has been a complete pleasure, an absolute wonderful discussion, enriching comments as well as contributions, not only from those who were on the dais, but those who are present in both the virtual and in-person space. I think that we have been given the opportunity to set forth with a variety of challenges, but we have also identified some impactful implications. I think both of the panelists who are there in the physical space have shared with us some practical examples, ways in which we can continue to move the pendulum and truly rethink education from an excellence measure in Africa. I will finally offer that the conversation does not end with this session today, that we do have the opportunity to continue through networking and also through collaborations. I am so honored and truly appreciative of the time that we've had today. Again, thank you to the AAU for your wonderful coordination and time. We look forward to continuing in this wonderful conference.
Thank you very much, Professor Candice. Put your hands together for Prof and the team for a wonderful session. Thank you very much. You can do it better. Take your seats, please. And also to say that this conference is broadcasted live over 30 countries over Africa and some parts of Southern Europe on AAU TV, the voice of higher education in Africa. AAU TV has ensured that this program has been broadcasted to all of these countries on our satellite broadcasting transmission platform. So put your hands together for AAU TV, committed to inform, to transform through very impactful content. So up next is the youth engagement. You may be eager to find out what exactly would be on the table for the young people and some aspects on how they can deliberate to the good of the youth. That'll be covered up in a few minutes. So we'll take some musical interludes online and we'll do a setup. So surprisingly, just keep your fingers crossed. It will be amazing. Thank you very much.
Factors which sort of limits the full participation of women in fields such as STEM.
The aim is to exhibit, to demonstrate the technologies that we have been working with over the years.
Your job as a leader is to ensure that you train people who are even better than you are. That's leadership, because you will leave one day and you ought to equip people with the skills to take over from you.
African Student Voices is a program where we discuss issues pertaining to the welfare and well-being of students across Africa's higher education institutions and our society.
Just because of the change in society of late, we have some kind of connection between academia and then the industry.
You're studying a course like mine, which is very demanding, accounting, finance and economics. You know, it's the course alone is a headache. It's a headache. How much more? I think the headache of having to think about where the fee is going to come from.
On this program, we project the concerns and views of students in Africa on their welfare and well-being in their various institutions.
Government is trying every means possible to make the systems work. And that same government that I have entrusted in is telling me that the payroll is full. Of course, I will try what's help.
We also empower students to be informed and responsible future leaders of Africa, and also educate the youth of Africa on Africa's developmental blueprints and strategies.
Schools can collaborate with institutions to provide, seminars for students, job fairs for students to learn, to equip students to get ready for the job market.
Join me on the African Student Voices program this and every Friday at exactly 2 p.m. as I engage with students on the issues affecting them and the way forward. I am your host, Chimaima Daladem Duche. You can also follow us on our social media handles, Association of African Universities on Facebook and YouTube, AAUTV_African Universities on Twitter, and AAUTV Official on Instagram.
Hello, Africa. You're welcome to AgroLink on AAUTV. AgroLink is a program that aims at showcasing and highlights agricultural activities on the continent. The African Union defines the African diaspora as consisting of people of native African origin living outside of the continent, irrespective of their citizenship and nationality, and who are willing to contribute to the development of the continent and the building of the African Union. In recognition of the enormous contribution of the diaspora to the continent, the Association of African Universities rolled out a program, Diaspora Connect, to identify and produce impactful interviews and documentaries that showcase the contributions of the African academics in the diaspora to institutions of higher learning in Africa. This program is partly funded by the Carnegie Corporation of New York. Featured on Diaspora Connect are fellows and hosts under the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program, funded by the Carnegie Corporation of New York. Also featured on Diaspora Connect are coverages that showcase the recontextualization of African technology, art, and culture towards the unification and rapid development of the continent. The diasporas are ready and willing to engage in meaningful thought and imagination that can guide the continent's efforts for emancipation, innovation, and recreation. And Africa is ready for its 6th region.
Follow us on our social media platforms on Facebook and YouTube at Association of African Universities, and on Twitter at AAU_African Universities, as well as on our dedicated website at tv.aau.org.
All right.
Hello, welcome to Health Africa, the health show.
All right, so you're welcome back to day 2, plenary session 2 on youth engagement. Right after the first session, you were wondering what's happening. So this session will bring together students and an expert to deliberate on some very, very critical matters on the welfare and well-being of students. And this youth engagement session will be chaired by Dr. Kwesi Bwedi, Pan-African Heritage World Museum Academic Council. So put us together for Dr. Kwesi Bwedi as it makes way to sit as chair for the youth engagement session. The topics would be, number 1, the role of the youth in the promotion of Pan-Africanism. And this will feature special students from the AUCC and other institutions. We also have the next topic on empowering African youth to top artificial intelligence, knowledge, and education. This will be run by Professor Mani El Sharif, Vice President, Pan-African University Board, and Mr. Ferit Oztek, Global AI Hub. The rapporteur for the session is Mr. Isaac Darko, student, University of Education, Winnipeg. Nice people, put your hands together for students, reps who will be featuring in this session from AUCC and other institutions. Put your hands together for them as they make their way to sit down. We can do it better. Young people like applause. We can do it better for them. Stronger applause for them, please. All right. They gently make their way up here to sit. Okay. So at this moment, I will gently hand over the microphone to Dr. Kwesi Bwedi.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you for having me here this afternoon. As you heard, with the Academic Council of the Pan-African Heritage World Museum. Now, in the course of the year, as we started thinking about this conference, we started deliberating on how best to involve the youth, not just in this conference, but to raise the Pan-African consciousness of the youth in Africa and in the diaspora. And we settled on getting a group of young educators imbued with Pan-African consciousness to reach out to the country, not just in Ghana, but all over Africa, to begin the dialogue or conversation on Pan-Africanism. And it's no coincidence that this conference is on education. And today we've heard quite a bit about education or learning, as the question was posed. Now, whether it's learning or education, no matter how we defined it, we thought it's not just the content. It's not just the content of Pan-Africanism, but we need to rethink pedagogy. How do we teach our students? And one of the new ways is a paradigm shift. We've heard quite a bit about it, but what we have today is to have students from the African College of Communications and then African University College of Communication. Excuse me, I always mess up that name. And then we have a student from the University of, a grad student from University of Cape Coast. They will introduce themselves, and they have their colleagues online from the University of Alabama and from California State University in Long Beach. Now, the topic is, we chose Black consciousness. So they're going to have a conversation on Black consciousness and its relevance to Pan-Africanism. But first, there will be some poetry recital. And before they do that, I will invite each and every one to introduce themselves to the audience. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Deolu Cole. I'm a student from AUCC studying strategic communication. I am in my final year, and I'm also the head of marketing for Afronova Radio.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vanessa Vanderpoy. I'm also a student of African University College of Communications, studying journalism. I'm also the content head for Afronova Radio.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Uswansa, a proud student of African University College of Communication. I'm in level 300 studying Stratcom, that's strategic communication, and also the secretary for Afronova Radio. Thank you.
I'm Bright Aziba, AUCC student and in second year.
Hello, elders, brothers and sisters. My name is Amate Lai, a graduate from the University of Cape Coast. My research interest is African socio-political thoughts, and I'm currently admitted to Howard University for a PhD in African Studies. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Vincent Anane, a student of African University College of Communication, a level 300 student studying strategic communication, and also head of production for Afronova Radio.
The conversation itself is going to be just about 30 minutes, but before then, we would like to invite Delu, Ms. Cole, to introduce the poetry recital before they begin the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, so we have two of our beautiful students here, and they are going to perform the poetry, My Mother Africa. We have Vanessa Vanderpoy and then Stephanie Osansa, both in 300 AUCC students and both parts of the Afronova Radio. So let's welcome them.
Good day, everybody. My name is Stephanie Uswansa, and the title of my poem is My Mother Africa. This is the stress of Africa. The sun rises each day with a loud cry, hidden under beneath the beaming ray. She looked forth of the remain of her cousins, signs and notes in anxious. She asks in the voice of her messengers, when shall Africa ray to her beauty? She looks on Africa and sees the tide of mystery that hit hard at her bank. A world these tides a world washed souls of waves of reality and tormented by the corruption. Again, she speaks of a second wind, the wind that blows my home, Africa, roughly caressing the scarred faces each time, reviving the one wound sore and its countless doses of poverty, living fossil of anger and disheartening, all laying across the common hearts.
The second wind blows downwards always, bringing out the struggles of Africa, where the country is sinking in woe. Again, the sun takes a second look at Mother Africa, and it sees the last drops of hope remaining in the jar. Africa is the face of hope, and I too see the faces of hope. I myself am one. I am a proud one speaking to you now. And I believe that Africa has the faith to grow. The tree that grows on this ill soil, from our arid lands to our river banks. Africa shall grow. I too am a proud one. Brother, we shall weave this loosened of this unity with the adhesiveness of Pan-Africanism. It will only take time. Thank you. I'm sure some of you are wondering why we are reciting this poem barefooted, because we are trying to portray how our people were taken from their land barefooted to another man's land. And we want our people to return back. That is why we are speaking to you, to show the struggles of our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa and Stephanie. A big round of applause for them. Oh, let's give it, okay? Now, if I heard right, the last line was something to do with transforming the pegs into Pan-Africanism. I don't know whether the pegs are the 50 individual countries that we have now without any solid voice on the continental, on the global stage. So these courageous, vulnerable youngsters are going to be the first of the group of hopefully educators who would take the message of Pan-Africanism to the youth. And we've been having conversations on Steve Biko's Black consciousness and its relationship with Pan-Africanism, and of course, if it is still relevant today. So I will invite them to begin the conversation.
Hi, so we would like to start this conversation with who is an African and who is a Black person? Are they the same? Are they different?
Well, one would say that as long as I am from the continent of Africa, I am Black. But Steve Biko says that there is a difference between Black and African. I would believe that an African is someone who has an African heritage, someone who has their roots tracing back to Africa, no matter how much blood has diluted it. You are still an African. But to be Black, Steve Biko said in his book, Black Consciousness, that Black is not just the pigment of your skin. It's not just your skin color, but it's actually your mentality. It deals with the way you speak, the way you walk, the way you do things. That's what shows that you are Black, your struggle.
Well, I think all Africans have a trace back to the African continent as Black people, but being Black is not necessarily about your skin color, but it is more about your mindset, your mentality, your culture, and then our history.
Right. So to me, the issue of who an African is a very difficult response to give, because everyone would want to define an African in a certain perspective. But for me, two things marks a person as an African. Like Vanessa rightly said, someone who is capable of tracing his descendant to the continent and then is ready to give his loyalty to the continent of Africa. So it goes beyond being Black to a state of being conscious of your existence and from where you come from, and you are ready to contribute your quota to the development of Africa. And the word Black, has Steve Biko rightly used, he used it to me in a political sense to show a kind of distinction between Africans and then the Westerners, or if you like, Blacks and white, because they were faced with a struggle, which was called the apartheid system, where Blacks in South Africa went through all kinds of inhuman treatment. So there was a sense for him to conscientize the youth and his people and the Black persons of South Africa for a certain total liberation from the struggles that they go through. So in a way, we can use Black and African simultaneously, but in a strict sense, there can be difference. Thank you.
So I want to ask a question. You have whites in a Western world who would love to hit their chest and say they are proud Africans. You have, let's say, for example, you have England, someone from England who would proudly say, I am an African. With that one, where would you place the person? Because he is not an African, or he doesn't trace his descent or his or her roots back to Africa, but I would say, I am an African. Where would you place that person?
Actually, I would say that person isn't an African, as long as you do not have the African heritage. The person can say that they are Black, because Black is a movement. It's more than just the color of your skin. So the person can proudly say they are Black because they support the Black movement. They want to side with us. They want to show that even though they are white, and even though we may have a different skin color, we are still one people.
To add up to what she said, what Vanessa said, right? It's possible you can have a white person who would want to sympathize with what Blacks around the world are going through. But the fact is that that person can't feel what it takes to be Black. He or she can sympathize with us, but does not know what it takes to be a Black person, especially going through the humiliations of just being a Black person. So Steve Biko was right on point when he said that there are some persons who are white in skin, but have that Black consciousness to think of humanity in totality, and these are the people that could align with Blackness, could align with the Black people. But again, we should be careful of how we relate to these people, because it is one thing to sympathize with Black people, and it's another thing to be Black. And this is a participation that whiteness cannot be part of. Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to make a reference from Kwame Nkrumah's Africa Must Unite. And he said, we have seen in the example of the United States how the dynamic elements within society understood the need for unity and fought their bitter civil war to maintain the political union that was threatened by the recreational forces. We have also seen in the example of the Soviet Union how the forging of continental unity, along with the retention of national sovereignty by the feudal states, has achieved a dynamism that has lifted a most backward society into a most powerful one. From the examples before us in Europe and United States, it is therefore potent that we in Africa have the resources present and potential for creating the kind of society that we are anxious to build. Nkrumah was stating examples like how United States of America, was not United States of America in the beginning. They were all different states. Some of them were colonies belonging to the British, but they were able to come together and fight to become united. And the same for the Soviet Union. And he said, even though that the countries that come together to form the Soviet Union are being governed by the Soviet Union, they still have their independence. And he said the same can be done for Africa. He said that we still have, Africa has all the resources present and the potential for creating the kind of society that we are anxious to build. He also said that there are things that are preventing us from building this. That is our leadership and our mentality. So that is where the Black consciousness comes in.
So Vanessa spoke about Kwame Nkrumah's vision for Africa. Amate also spoke about Black consciousness. So now my question is, what is Black consciousness and why do we even need it? Is it relevant in this day and age? Because we're in the modern day, we're in the digital world. So is it still relevant to us?
Jelly, thank you so much for the question. I find Black consciousness, as articulated by Steve Biko, very instructive and a kind of correlation with Pan-Africanism. To me, what Steve Biko says, if I should take inspiration from him, Black consciousness is basically the realization of your Blackness to rally together as a people who have been oppressed in order to come out of the shackles of oppression and servitude. The bigger picture or the essence of Black consciousness is the unification of all African people wherever they find themselves to overthrow white supremacy. That very thing that instill in them the sense of racism, colonialism, slavery, etc. So Black consciousness, if you like, is the mindset to participate in the exhibition of Pan-Africanism. So Black consciousness is very vital and very, very important currently because it gives the youth the sense of realization of their existence in order to be able to foresee the kind of future they want. So Steve Biko, in his writing of this book, I'm very certain that he was in his youthful age, and likewise other persons who have championed Pan-Africanism. Most of them were writing things at the time where they were of our age. And so there's so much to do with being a youth and the kind of energy we could put in the country or in the continent. Africa has a youthful population. What this means is that the strength of Africa is dependent on the youth. So if the young people are conscious of their state, we have this Black consciousness, then we are certain that our leaders will serve as gatekeepers to our leaders so that they don't only go in for any policy for us because of their individualistic tendencies, but then for the greater good of us all. Thank you.
In addition to what Amate said, yes, we the youth are actually the leaders for tomorrow. So don't you think it would be very nice if Black consciousness and other Pan-African courses can be included in our primary subjects in universities, in secondary school, in middle school? Don't you think it would be a good thing if they should add all these things, all this awareness, creating awareness for Black consciousness at a very tender age? So when you meet someone who is 10 or 12 years old and you ask them about their confidence in being Black, their confidence in being African, and they have an idea, they have knowledge on what it means to be Black.
Yes, I agree with what Delu just said. In Nkrumah's book, Africa Must Unite, he noted that one of the things that prevents Africa from being united is our leadership. Okay, and the leadership, it starts from the young age. how we are now and who we grow to be. So if we start things like this, we do not even celebrate Black History Month, yet it is celebrated outside of Africa. They are celebrating Africa outside of Africa, where we, the Africans, most of us do not even know of this. Most of us, some people do not even know of Black Lives Matter. And why would they care if no one is raising recognition here? So if we're able to promote things like this from the young age, we're able to bring in books for them to read, we're able to promote Black History Month and even promote some of the holidays, celebrate most of the activists, then we'll be able to cultivate that habit, the culture of Pan-Africanism among our children.
I want us to digress just a little bit. Earlier on, much earlier on, I forgot who said that if you have an African heritage, then you are Black. Maybe I didn't hear right, because then what do we say to our brothers and sisters in Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria? Are they Black? And this is a rhetorical question for you guys to delve a little, because it defies very simplistic answers, but I want us to toss it around a little bit.
Okay, so with the question you just asked, people from African descent are Africans. So you can identify an African by their race, by their culture, by their political thinking, by geography also. But then when it comes to Black, like Amate said, Black is more or less like a movement. So in the Western world, they saw themselves as superior. So as long as you weren't white, you were Black. Whether you were Spanish, whether you were from the Caribbean, it didn't matter. As long as you were not white, you were Black. So being Black is not just pigmentation. It's not just about the skin color. It's about your mentality, how you think, how you react to things, how you react to situations, your mind processes. It's defines you being Black. But when it comes to you being African, it's more or less your descendants are from Africa, your race, your culture, geographic location. But Black is not one thing. It's like a movement. It's a way we think. That's why there's Black consciousness, because it's a state of mind. It's not just a nationality.
You're saying when someone does something, means that that's the movement. So is that the reason why maybe when someone does something, they'll be like, oh, Black mind? I don't know, like someone will do something, they'll end up, oh, you see, Black mind, Black mind. Is it because of the movement the person did?
Okay, so that's also another thing to tackle. Whenever, even growing up, whenever you do something that was in a sense not right or not acceptable in society, they would tell you this is Black mentality. Now, I watched a documentary and it said that our history was passed down mostly not from us Africans. So our history has been brought to us and it presents us at our lowest form. That's whenever you do something, they try to associate Black with everything that is negative. When Ebola came, it was from Africa. Even when COVID came, they tried to bring Africa into it. Everything almost negative, they tried to relate it to Africa, because this is a way of trying to present our history to us at our lowest. But when you do something and someone says that you are Black or this is a Black mentality, I think it's our right as Blacks, as Africans, as youth, to educate them that whatever I'm doing is not Black mentality, because Black mentality is not wrong and it's not negative.
To add up to what Diallo said, even in the 9th, I think in the 18th century, in the United States, any color apart from you being white is recognized as Black. Whether you are a mixed race or you are, once you are not born of two white parents, then you are recognized as a Black person. And so to be Black was used in a very political sense, you know. So, and it's just a recent thing that they've tried in the 20th century downwards, that today someone says, I'm a mixed race, I'm from this, I'm from here. But at the end of the day, you realize that there's a certain Black pigment in that person. So anything that is non-white, anything that is not white, anything that is not white, you are recognized as a Black person, you know. But it just goes beyond just being Black. It comes with a lot of derogatory words, like as you rightly said. Anytime someone does the wrong thing, they say you have a Black mentality, as if to say that Blacks are always in the wrong to think in a certain way. And that is not reality. That was politically done and was consciously done in order to deprive us of anything good. So it is up to us as young people growing up to try to redefine what it means to be Black to people and to associate ourselves with Blackness, because that is what we are born into. We can't but embrace this reality. And that is our duty as young people, to orient ourselves, re-educate ourselves, and also the people around us, because we are the future generations of this country, of this continent. There are times I ask myself, so today, if Nkrumah, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Kambaraga Nyerere, Marcus Garvey, etc., they see what is happening to us young ones and the kind of aspirations we have, would they regret for fighting the way they fought for us? Because it's as if to say that you are not upholding what they did for us, and we want to just leave everything to the ground. But as my sisters said in their poem, Africa shall grow. In fact, Africa is growing, and this is the time for the young people. Thank you.
To add up to what my colleagues have said, I once read a quote by Alexander Blyden, and he said that for Africa to be united, we must bring the Africans in the diaspora to Africa to come and fix things. Now, if you take Steve Biko's book, The Black Consciousness, he said that Africa promoted the racism that we endured in two ways. One, by allowing the fear to control us. Two, by allowing, and he said, and I quote, letting the liberals and the leftists do things for the Black. And this referred to the whites who joined the National Union of the South African Students and other parties. We all know that there were white people who helped us in our movements. Okay, and there are some people who believe that before we can even move forward, we need the white man's help. So Alexander Blyden believed that our Africans in the diaspora had the knowledge because they had learned from the white. They grew up on the white man's land. So they could come and fix us here in Africa, because they believed that we did not have the knowledge to be able to fix ourselves. But Steve Biko challenged that. He believed that these people were actually the ones preventing us Blacks from growing, from progressing. Because the whites want to come and be the ones in charge of our movements. They want to come and show us what we have to do. So in a way, these two are clashing. And I want to know, do we need the Africans in the diaspora to come and help us fix our country? Or can we do it on our own?
So in a way, we do need them, but we have to start here with ourselves first. We have to start from our educational system. I think we have to introduce the African culture into our educational system more than what is there now. And then before those who are outside the country, who are Blacks, who are Africans, can help us, because if we don't start it here, if we don't start with ourselves, it's not going to work, even if they come and help us. Or I don't know.
For me, I believe we don't need them to progress or to build our continent, just because we have all the resources. Africa has all the resources they have everything that they need. But then we going there to study to come and help our continent. Just recently, I listened to the news and I realized African diaspora, okay, let me say diasporans from all over the world will come to Africa and rather milk what we have. Just because, let's say, if African, we need loans, we need money to do everything. We go to the Western world for loans, and they would dictate what they want us to use the money for. So I believe we don't need that. But then if we work, if our leaders come on board and stop all this nepotism, all this bribery and corruption, we would grow as one people.
All right. So to me, I think we can't ignore the relevance of African diasporans, particularly during the days of Nkrumah in Ghana before he went to US to study. This is a young man who just wanted to be a pastor, and that was all his dream. It is when he went out of the continent, he came around people like Du Bois, Garvey, etc., and that instilled in him a sense of nationalism, African nationalism. So it was the 1945 conference held in Manchester under the umbrella of Pan-Africanism. That's birthed political independence for us in Africa, because the persons like Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, and etc. were part of the conference, just like we are doing here. So we could say in a way, well, it is the case that the diasporans have participated immensely in our existence in terms of the development of Africa, but it's up to us to also be very careful, because these are people who have been trained in the Western land. And so sometimes they could be biased in their take on how development should go. That is why it is also our duty as young people to be very united, extremely united. And to me, that is the beginning of development for us. That is the beginning of Pan-Africanism. It is the unity that builds development. And this is what Nkrumah was saying during his days, that we should think about United States of Africa. Today, we know how powerful USA is because it is in the United States, it's that United States of America. And imagine if Africa, the place where the world's resources are, imagine if we are united, we will see enough development than we are seeing now. Because of the disunity among us as a country or as a people, that is why the Western world still took advantage of us. Congo is said to be the richest they are rich with minerals. And for instance, the bomb that US used to destroy Japan, in Hiroshima, that Ukraine uranium was discovered in Congo. There's something we are supposed to get from here, which is the relevance of Africa in the world. So there's so much effort to distract us as a people in order for us to be divided, and then we give off our resources. So we need to keep these things. And it takes things like this, conversations like this, intellectual discussions like this, in order for us to see the essence why we are supposed to come together. Thank you.
Well, we were given 30 minutes for this session. And as you can tell, quite a number of provocative statements have been thrown out here. To go through all of them will require forever. But this is the beginning of conversation, and you've heard them. And I just want to emphasize that what we are seeing here, hopefully, is a new way of instruction. I'm the teacher. I've been sitting here listening to them. Normally, I would just correct them right away. But no, because take, for instance, what Anani said about, quote unquote, help from the diaspora. We don't need. Amate came back and tried to get Anani to understand that, no, sometimes we do. So this is a way of learning. In the old days in Africa, they said palava tree. Our elders will sit under the tree and talk, consensus. But it looks like we need it now. Instead of the strict liberal, majoritarian, all those in favor, yes, you see that in parliament. It's getting us nowhere. So I just want to give the last word to any one of them, and then we have some 5 minutes for question and comment from the audience.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Kojo Gabua. Me, I make very optimistic about the future of Africa because the things where you talk here. I be professor of archaeology and heritage studies. And I think say I for speak the way they speak because it being go appeal to many of my people when they understand the points in English way they yap for there. I think say it's a state of mind as my sister talk for there. So I just want to encourage you say from now onwards, make you try be the thing where they talk, not be the trends where they follow. Every day you say what is trending, then they go follow. Then you won't speak like the queen himself. You go speak with the queen self. You speak this language, the queen self will learn how to speak our English for here. That be the kind of thing where you go move us forward, where you go be ourselves. Thank you very much for the thing where they do.
Thank you. My name is Abena Busia, and please trust me, when I make my first comment, I'm making it not because I'm playing party politics, but because I am a teacher and a teacher of the African diaspora. The history of Pan-Africanism did not begin with Nkrumah or in 1945. The Congress that met in 1945, which Nkrumah attended, was the 5th. Okay, so if you want to look at and understand the history of Pan-Africanism, go back to the first Congress, go back to 1900. Okay, that's a very important thing because we do need to understand how history is told. And we need to understand that we can speak our own histories and we need to make a better job of writing our own histories to pass on. But history doesn't begin with us, okay? There were a whole series. Ask yourselves, why is George Padmore, why do we have a Padmore Library here? Why is Du Bois buried here? There is a complex history of Black aspirations that way precedes 1945. And those people came here, yes, because Ghana was inspiring to them, but they came with a long history. W.E.B. Du Bois was the first African-American PhD from Harvard University, from Harvard, in fact, but his PhD, if I remember correctly, is from a university in Germany. Okay, so there's a long history of Africans wanting to unite, which precedes 1945. It's the mistake also, the history of the diaspora does not begin with slavery. It's, we have to deal with slavery because of the power relations that led to it and that still exist with us. But as Dr. Ivan van Sertima wrote, they came before the Mayflower. So there is a history of what Africans have done around the world. And this, therefore, means we should also be careful how we speak, look at our language. My father was the first African Ghanaian professor and chair of the department here at this university. And he insisted on being a professor of sociology, not a professor of anthropology, because he was making a point. People can talk about the distinctions between the disciplines today, but my father's point was, he went to Oxford and he was very fortunate to do so, and he studied in the Department of Anthropology. But he said anthropology is what they call the departments when they're studying us. We are studying ourselves, and therefore I will be a professor of sociology. Language matters. As our poets know, you've pointed out several times, even today, if the cake is white and vanilla, it's angel's food cake. If it's chocolate, it's devil's food cake. We need to find different names for those foods, because my final point is, yes, we begin with our own education, but education begins at home. You know, I did not know I was Black until I went to England, because I was born here where everybody was Black. The distinction, that distinction did not matter when I was a little girl here. Even mixed race, I did not know about. The first time somebody used the word miscegenation, I didn't know what they were talking about. And I had to point out to them, I come from a culture where people who are Black and white being intimate together was not such a strange thing that you had to invent a nasty name for it. The first time somebody called me mixed was a Ghanaian who looked at me and told me I was mixed because my mother's Ghana, my father's Bunu. I was so shocked. We have to think of what we do and look at the difference between how we identify and what other people, how other people call us. And we don't have to accept what other people call us. We have to work on how we look at ourselves and how we articulate who we are and where we are from. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carolina Moraes. I'm coming from Brazil. I'm the CEO of the African Pride Company and also a historian and a teacher. So coming from diaspora, first of all, it's very wonderful to hear all of you. Something that we need to say here is in diaspora, especially I'm talking about Brazil, that is the biggest diaspora, Black diaspora in the world. I don't know if you are aware, but in the entire world, Nigeria is #1 with Black people population and Brazil is #2. So outside of Africa, we are the biggest country in Black people. But the Black people over there, they don't even know that maybe we are having a kind of event like this today. So my point over here, as a Black woman in Brazil, that sometimes when come to Africa and people calls me, like they say in Nigeria, Oimbo, you know, a white person, it's a little bit challenged, you know, because we in diaspora, we want to recognize ourselves as African. We recognize ourselves as Black, but sometimes we don't feel that welcome, you know, in Africa. So something that is very important is that the diaspora needs to know that these voices are raising up. The diaspora needs to know that Africa is calling them back, because I can tell you that we want to be Black. In Brazil, we face a very difficult challenge that is every 23 minutes, a Black person is murdered, especially by the police. So in the time that we can be talking about development, education, we are talking about how can we survive as a Black person over there. So if we know that African is calling us back, we know that we have a hope and a solution to our problems over there as well. We want to learn with African. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we'll pick one last one here. Okay, so a few here, they'll go online.
Thank you. My name is Kwejo Senyame Jr. I just wanted to respond to a few of the comments on the table. One was about whether the diasporans have any relevance for us. I spent a few years in the diaspora in Babylon, in a place called School of Oriental and African Studies. And I taught African literature. So I'm coming from that general background. I think that it's almost impossible, improbable now in this day and age to distinguish Africa from its diaspora. The diaspora is just an extended homeland. And you know, we all know the history of the forced transplantation and slavery, et cetera, et cetera. And also when you even think of African struggles, African liberation movements, diasporans were always there. It's already been mentioned how, I mean, when you go right, I think adjacent to the street divides the Du Bois Memorial Center, now describe the Garvey Du Bois Memorial Center. It's for a reason. Diasporans have been central to African struggles and independence. At one point, Padmore was here, CLR James was here, Frantz Fanon was here, a whole lot of people. Maya Angelou spent many, many years in Ghana, you know, performing and teaching and trying to create that connection between Africa and the diaspora. So it's an absolute must. We can't, the diaspora is part of us. They just happen to be in a different location because someone forcibly took them from here and threw them there. So they are part of us. Then there was also that question about whether people from Tunisia, Egypt, Algeria, etc., usually called sub-Saharan Africa, which is kind of problematic. But again, somehow they're part of us. Of course, there's a history of how prior to the present inhabitants of Libya, Tunisia, the so-called Arab African countries, there were all peopled by indigenous Black people. And there's the whole history of usurpation and removal, etc., etc. So sometimes there are all those differences in terms of, history and discrimination, etc. But again, when you consider things like the Conference of African Football, the African Cup of Nations, etc., etc., those people are part of us. And then the whole thing about Black identity, Black consciousness is a very difficult issue to discuss. Somebody asked about whether somebody who's of white ethnicity, can be. Of course, it's been said already, so I'm just kind of, talking a bit more about it. It's to do with your state of mind. Your what you go through, what you feel as a Black person. But of course, there have been people like Basil Davidson, who are white authors who've written about the history of Africa, contributing, showing, how important it is, have fought against racism, John Johnson, etc., etc. But it's more to do with us. So of course, they say charity begins at home. We have to start the nation building process. But I think the first thing is that at nursery and kindergarten right here in Ghana, we should stop thinking Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water, and talk about Kofi and Amma and the Afram Plains, etc., etc., and that Domi Bridge, etc., etc. Because who are Jack and Jill for the ordinary Ghanaian person growing up? So we should start with a process of decolonization right from kindergarten and nursery, and create a sense of self-belief. Otherwise, if we have that sense of self-belief, we wouldn't allow other people to come and take our resources, reprocess them, and sell them back to us, when we actually own the thing, and actually we are wealthier than them. And we are not a poor continent. We are an impoverished continent. We are not poor. We are not, some make it out that we are congenitally poor and we need aid and assistance, etc., etc. Okay, my mic has gone off, so I think it's time to stop.
Let's do some online and we'll come back in here, please. Pardon me on that. We have Sari Kasimu, who's online, yeah. So let's pick a couple of online participants to share their view.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Please enable your video, please. Can you enable your video?
My phone, this thing has problem.
All right, it's fine.
The cam, yes. I'm ready. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I think the presentation has been wonderful. But my general observation, the use of the words black, as if African is only black race. Don't you think we ourselves were indeed a bit using connotation of racist? Other continent will look at us, or other people will be laughing at us. We should use Africa, since it's already initiated by our predecessors, that they are tired for Africa. We should maintain African, because we have other races within African continent. I think this will, kill stigmatization by others, that we are cohabitating in African continent together. Then again, such thing, the major tribes in Africa, we have what's this tribe in Kenya that will spread across Kenya, Democratic Republic of Congo, and the rest. Is it KwaZulu-Natal? For we to know that this is the most populated tribes in Africa, and this is their economic, this is their tradition, because most of these groups developed in their own pace as nation before the Berlin Conference of 1882, that 1886 that split us, divide us to look ourselves as country, which is good. We accept that, but in tracing our history or making presentation, we should present ourselves as Africa, because God has used his natural architecture to carve us out. If you look at the world from the lens, so we are Africa, my candid opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. So we can also hear from Emily Hassana Debbie. Go ahead, Emily.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for the privilege of participating in this program. I'm Hassana Gwandi Audu from Nigeria, a PhD student from the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. I'm so impressed with our participants and what they've discussed, especially particularly the lady that spoke, that's the second to the last lady, talking about, Pan-Africa and then 1900. You see, from my own mindset, this issue of racism, Blackism, it has to do with a mindset. You don't accept everything in your mind and process it. One thing is accepting it, another aspect is processing. But I believe Africa, we are better and bigger than what people are tagging us as Black. So we get to eradicate that in our mindset, not to allow it to sink into us and to process. Then talking about Africa as a whole, we have great and wonderful people in Africa with great innovations, ideas, inventions, strategies that can boost our nation, our continent, Africa, from where it is now to a better place. For example, someone was talking about Congo having they're rich in solid minerals, which is true. I'm privileged to be given an assignment, which I'm doing a bench work on lithium, processing lithium, into lithium products. And I came across Congo processing things like that. And sincerely speaking, there's this thing in me, this anger in me that we could do this thing. We are rich in the solid minerals. We can produce things for Africa, and then we could, send it to abroad, and we could also utilize it to a large extent. I have been working in the mining side. I have been into processing, not the mining aspect, but I work with the miners, with the geologists, but I have been in the processing unit. I start from the bench work to the pilot plant into the factory, and that's in Nigeria here. And from what I have gathered, the information, the knowledge, the experiences, I'm saying this from the depth of my heart. I believe Africa can do better than what we are now. We can achieve a lot. The idea of, other nations coming in to mine the solid minerals and other things that we have, I think it's high time for we to look into this and come together as an African continent, to put ourselves together to establish this. I was privileged to be in the mining side, and I narrowly escaped kidnapping, but that didn't stop me from, working. And I was given an assignment, which within 2 years, I was able to come up with something that was bankable. Bank of Industry of Nigeria accepted it, Nexim Bank, and we are working on that project.
Thank you, Emily.
Yes, sir. So, and
you would have to wrap up.
Yes, at that particular stage, it was after the whole thing, I discovered there was a book given to me that was even written before 1900 on the geological survey of Africa as a whole, done by, the foreigners, having information on some, countries in Africa with this. So I believe we can mobilize our youths, our elders are there, our leaders are there. We can put up things together and get things working. Get our industry, let's get industrialized, revolutionary, in all sectors. Is it the academic sector, educational sector, the health sector, everything. We can do better.
All right, thank you very much. Let's take George. So George, please kindly make it very brief, okay? We have to wrap the session up. Brief from George and brief from Cecile, that we get the remarks from the chair.
I will be very brief. This is George from Uganda. I am very much concerned with the usage of certain words like Black, like is a mentality, but also it drives my attention to the usage of the word Pan-Africanism. I am not an authority in history, but when I look at that word Pan-Africanism, it comes from our history of colonialism, where Africans were struggling to survive. My question to this forum is it still necessary to keep using the word Pan-Africanism? Can't the scholars sit together and begin to ask, is it still relevant looking at our situation now? Have we not yet changed? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll note that down and we'll take from Cecile briefly, and then we'll go to Andrea C. Lumumba and Dr. Brahim Idrisu. We'll have to do this briefly, quickly before.
Yeah, this good afternoon. Ourselves. Yeah. And so I am happy that you are on this panel, that you have expressed yourself, and I encourage you to continue because you are well on your way to be the next leaders of Africa.
Thank you, Cecile. Let's take it from Andrea C. Lumumba. Brief one. With your video on, please.
Okay, yes. Unmute. Okay. Yes, very briefly, I'm from Côte d'Ivoire, and I teach at Cornell University in African Studies in the state of New York. And I worked a lot with the young people, the youth in general, students, and those who are not students. And I usually, but all I want to say is to congratulate you. You are the leaders of not only the future today, and you now make other comments as we go on. The diaspora must be defined in a very historical way. We have the historic diaspora, those who came in chain, but also the descendant of those who came before Columbus. As Van Septima said,